Welcome to the Fit Marriage Show, the #1 straight talk fitness show for busy folks. I'm Dustin Reekman, and today I have the great pleasure of having Jonathan Fields on the program with us. Before we jump into Jonathan's interview, I just want to remind you, if you've been around a while or maybe you're a new listener, that we have an awesome library called the Ready, Set, Go Blueprints Library. It's got 5 or 6 really great free training programs in there. It's got a brand new cookbook. It's got a motivational seminar. It's got a free core workout, a 5K training plan, just a bunch of great stuff. So definitely go check that out if you haven't yet. That's readysetgoblueprints.com and get your free stuff. So Jonathan is just an awesome guy. I've got to know him pretty well through the online blogging circles, and I was really honored to have him on because he's a real expert in careers and kind of getting outside the box in the way that we think about our careers and how they fit into our life. And more specifically, how our life comes first and our careers need to fit around that. And so I think today you're going to really enjoy this interview. A lot of practical step-by-step tips for how to get where you need to be with your career and how that will enhance both your health and your family life. So without further ado, let's jump in with Jonathan. Welcome once again, everyone. I'm very honored today to have Jonathan Fields on the call with us. As many of you know, Jonathan is a real expert in the area of career and life balance, and I think he's expert not only by way of being an author and kind of the typical route, but he's lived it. And so that's really what we're going to focus on a lot today is Jonathan's story and his advice from his own life lessons on how we can do better with our career and our health and our family. So Jonathan, thanks so much for being here. And to kick things off, I think it would help to kind of set the, to provide a setting here, to kind of give us a snapshot of what your life's like today, as far as your family goes and kind of what you do for a living, which I know is pretty varied.
Sure. And thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And for everyone who's watching, I appreciate your time as well. My life today is focused professionally. Well, let's frame it in a bigger way first. I start out with my when somebody asks me what I do or how my life is, I start out with my wife and daughter because they're the center of everything.
Perfect.
And I build around that rather than the way most people do it, which is they start out with a career at the center, and then they kind of fill in their life around that. I think that's the source of a lot of suffering in life. So I start out with family, and then I build career around that. And my current incarnation, and this is evolving constantly. A big focus is writing books. So I have, the last book was out a couple of years ago. The next one's coming out in 3 months, actually. And what I'd like to do is sort of stay on a path where I'm writing a book every year to year and a half, substantial book. Speaking around the topics that I write about, blogging, creating training and events around those things, consulting, in business and entrepreneurship and marketing, and increasingly innovation and creativity, and trying to take care of myself also.
Yeah, fantastic. I know before we hopped on, you just finished up a run. You're drinking your shake.
Punch shake.
Living the life. And it sounds like, the common theme, you have a lot of stuff going on, but it's all things that you're choosing. It's things that you love and you have a passion for. And as those passions change, you're able to evolve and still keep your family at the center, which I think is just awesome. I think it's a place that a lot of our listeners and our viewers who are mostly busy married couples, busy families, I think they strive for that. And so I hope today we'll be able to provide some good practical, tips and things that next steps they can take to set themselves on that same path.
Yeah, sure.
I think what'll be interesting to kind of give the right perspective so people, they hear that lifestyle and it'd be easy to think, well, this guy, he must have inherited a trust fund. He's living a life that it's always been this way. And I think it'll help a lot if you can kind of back up to my earliest known knowledge of your career, which was more of the Wall Street attorney, high stress, high pressure. You can kind of give us a snapshot of what that was like, how long ago that was, and then we'll kind of do a quick transition, through your evolution, if you will.
So yeah, I mean, I started my career really largely. Well, I mean, truth is, I started my career when I was like 6 years old selling lemonade, and I was an entrepreneur as a kid all the time. But then I made a departure from there, went to law school, was fortunate, did well in school, ended up at the SEC, and then working in a large firm in Manhattan. doing M&A, venture capital, stuff like that. So it was deal driven, crazy pressure,
Yeah.
huge money on the line, and so you had to hit deadlines. And I ended up after one stint, about 3 weeks, with almost no sleep and just crazy pressure. I ended up in the hospital with a perforated intestine and a huge abscess in the middle of my body.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a wake up call to me. When your career, your body rejects your career, you kind of have to listen. Most people, what I found is that our bodies tell us whether we're going, sort of doing the right thing or not, but we tend to listen less and less until our bodies finally give us the ultimate smackdown and say, listen up, idiot. Like you haven't taken all the hints, like all this, and like the stress and the weight gain and the pain and the fatigue, and so now I'm just going to shut you down for a little while so you can listen. And then and then it's a matter of whether we're willing to do that. So that was kind of like one of my big wake up calls. And what it made me realize also was that I was spending probably 100 hours a week working at a job. I was making fabulous money. It was a power job, great reputation. But it was emptying me out. And, the truth is, if I could succeed at something that I really had no passion for, I wondered what happened if I actually turned that same work ethic loose on something that I actually cared about. So I started trying to figure out what those things were. And I just started making lists, the things that I thought were cool to do if I could make a living.
And this was, and not to interject, but this was back before you were married and everything, right? So
yeah,
this is even as a single guy, even though you had the time to probably do that a lot more than you would today and work the 100-hour weeks, you still weren't, even though you didn't have this family that you were ignoring, in the process, even just purely for yourself, you weren't feeling fulfilled with that kind of career choice. Is that right?
No, I'm completely unfulfilled. And largely also because there were a lot of things that I was passionate about that I had abandoned because I simply didn't have time for them anymore. Or at least I thought I didn't have time for them anymore. When you're working that kind of stress and those hours, you don't think logically.
Yeah.
So I mean, like right before I left the law, I actually just took a short leave of absence. I think it was like a month or something, because I knew that I wasn't capable of making an intelligent decision in sort of the state that I was in. I needed to pull myself out of it. But I knew. I mean, after I came out of the hospital, I knew at that point that it wasn't for me, but it was going to take me a little while to figure it out. So, and I was very fortunate in that, like you mentioned before, I'm not a trust fund kid. I didn't grow up with money, but I had a great job where I was making a lot of money. So I was able to bank a fair amount of money before I split, during the rest of the year or so. Because I knew that the next thing I wanted to do was probably entrepreneurship, probably in health and fitness. And in fact, I went from that to making $12 an hour as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
So I needed that money to survive until I actually figured out how to build a better mousetrap and start a real company.
Yeah, and that's great. And I was aware of that shift. Very interesting to go from health problems driven by, caused by your career to then making a complete 180 shift. I'm sure it wasn't a shift for you because you probably already had the health aspirations and interests, but what sounds like from the outside, a complete 180 shift to become a personal trainer and really focus on health and fitness as a career, instead of your career destroying your own health and fitness. And I know you spent a lot of time then, getting in the groove, learning, and at a very low rate compared to your previous attorney rate as a personal trainer. And I know eventually then you opened a yoga studio in New York City. And I actually heard your TED talk, which was fantastic, about fear and overcoming, and I know that's I think that's the topic of your next book. There were some really extraordinary circumstances around your yoga studio and the timing of that. I don't know if you want to share a little bit of that and kind of give people some perspective on the fact that this wasn't an easy choice, and then it really wasn't an easy time in New York City.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of brutal. And in between there was a 3-year window where I actually started a personal training center and grew that. Sold it. But then at that time, this was 2001, I was married, owned a home in Hell's Kitchen, had a 3-month-old baby.
Oh, okay.
And decided that it was the perfect time for me to open a yoga studio. No reputation, never having taught yoga before, like no big giant backers, just and a family to support in Manhattan. So I was walking down the street and I found the space that was 3 blocks from me. I said it was perfect. It was like a bombed out crack den when I saw it, but it had. And so I literally signed the lease on a Florida building in Manhattan in Hell's Kitchen on September 10th, 2001. And woke up the next morning. We all know what happened September 11th. And, the city was just if you weren't in the city, I mean, no matter how much footage you watch, nobody can understand what actually happened, and how people were walking around in a daze, mourning, crying, just, trying to figure out where to go and what to do. And of course, I knew, people that passed, and
Sure.
as anyone in the city that day did. And I was kind of like left with this huge decision. Do I go ahead and open this new company with, a family to support, and, in the city, literally businesses just collapsing left and right in the months that followed that. And I decided through an experience that I had, sort of visiting the family of one of the dads who passed, that I had to go forward and do it and lean into that place that I was scared of, and that actually at that time there was never a bigger need in the city for what I wanted to do, and I would figure out how to do it. And in fact, we launched about 8 weeks later, November 19th, 2001, and the gangbusters. We tried to do the right thing as much as we could too. That one of the piers where a lot of the relief workers were staged was 2 blocks away. And we just sent people down there and just said, come. It's not a money thing. I said, come for free. It's like,
Okay.
We don't want any money from anyone. Take class, meditate, whatever you want to do. Just this is a place where you can come and feel like there's a community here. And we started to grow pretty quickly. And as the city came out of that, it turned into one of the most successful studios in the city, if not the country, actually.
Yeah, and that's what I recalled was starting from just the absolute worst timing with no experience, and then you grew that to one of the most successful yoga studios in the country, and obviously you're in New York City where that's very difficult to do. So then ultimately, I guess you sold that, right? How long did you own that studio?
Yeah, so we owned it for seven years.
Okay.
Sold it in December 2008.
Okay, so this next piece of your life then is fairly new as far as being purely like the author, consultant, entrepreneur, traveling speaker, and that sort of thing. That's just a couple years old then.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had already started in the last couple of years of owning the studio. I had started doing a bunch of consulting, marketing, consulting, small business, just because people saw what I was doing some really unusual things from a marketing and business strategy standpoint with the yoga studio, because I came at it from a very different place than your average yoga studio owner. I was an entrepreneur and a business person, so I just was doing all sorts of other stuff. So I started developing other clients outside of that, and then so I actually sold my first book in 2007, and that's actually was the incentive for me to go online, because I just started looking at how are books going to be marketed in the future, and I believed that it was going to be online. So that led me into the online world, blogging, online marketing, stuff like that. And what started as just a way to, be able to sell more books turned into something much, much bigger.
Yeah, and that's a perfect transition, because that provides a great background perspective for people to kind of see where you came from and where you are now. And I think a lot of people will want to be able to capitalize on your experiences, which I know was the main topic of your first book, Career Renegade. And so, that book, sounds like it's really aimed at kind of that 9-to-5 corporate life and getting away from that for people who feel imprisoned by it or feel like it's not fulfilling and it's just not what they want to do, and kind of showing people a different path and how to be a renegade with your career. So I guess the second half of the interview here, I'd really like to talk a little more on the practical side, to the people listening about how they can take some of those steps. So, for the overworked mom or dad that's listening and maybe listening on their lunch break, at their corporate job, what I guess in general, and this is a big question considering you wrote a whole book about it. But what advice do you have for them, sort of? And this may be more of a encouragement lesson than a practical step, but
Yeah. So let's kind of like pick a couple of streamline things, since like I said, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the first place that you start is asking yourself what makes you come alive. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't really know, and it's a load of BS. We all know.
Yeah.
Just don't want to own it because we're terrified that we can't make enough money doing it. We all know. But as soon as we actually start to say it, then the red flag pops up. It says, ooh, that's not good enough. Either because somebody else said it's not a real career, or, internally we just don't believe that we can earn any money. And I wrote that book. When I wrote it, it was very much for grown-ups with responsibilities. It wasn't written for, like kids who could just take huge risks and stuff like that. This was a book that was designed for somebody that, had real obligations in the world that couldn't just walk away.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, if the world says this isn't a real career, and, like there's no clear mainstream path to generating an income doing this thing, is there some unconventional way to do it? And that was really the focus in that book. What are the unconventional ways of going about it and generating income from something that most people don't make money from? And sort of the big message there is first to identify, like I said, what are the elements, the qualities of a career that make you come alive? Even if you don't know the specific activities, yeah. What are the type of people that you love to be around? What are the specific tasks that you really enjoy doing, that where you get lost in them, you become absorbed in them? What are the physical settings that you just totally vibe in? Do you like to be outside? Do you like to be in warehouses? Do you like to be in a corporate setting with, like drop ceilings and formaldehyde carpets and
fluorescent lights and yeah.
Right. You can tell I love that setting. It's totally cool for some people. It's just, I know some designers that they just love to be like in a dark cave all day. That's their setting. So whatever's cool with you. And from there, you start to understand what are the qualities that are really important to you. And you start to look for those qualities, and you start to look for the activities and the qualities. And you start to see if, can you find them in your existing work? What a lot of people will actually discover is that there's actually alignment in maybe, like 4 out of 5 of the major categories, but there's one which is completely misaligned. So, maybe they actually do like the tasks and processes that they do every day. And maybe they like the physical environment, but the group that they're in, the culture of that group is killing them.
That's perfect. That hits home with me actually. So I'm going to let you keep going here because this is really awesome.
So and in fact, this was an interesting, somebody who actually didn't make it into the book that I've interviewed had that exact thing. She loved the company, loved the work, actually loved the people, but she had an interesting dynamic because the person above her in her group was a lifer, and that person wasn't going anywhere. And one of her big things that made her come alive was a quest for knowledge. She loved pushing and learning and growing, and she realized she wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
So, but she didn't want to just she didn't want to completely bail on the company. So what she did was she said, okay, most of the things that I need are in alignment, but I'm in a lot of pain because there's just one thing that's not. And she literally went to the head of the company and said, okay, I'm going to present you with something. I want to stay here. I want to keep working. I want to do good work for you. But this is a scenario. Can I move into a different path or division that would allow me more room to learn? And they loved that. And they actually said, yeah. But most people would never take that tack. They just start looking for another job or start looking for a company. So I think step one is if you can actually resolve, identify and resolve the major conflicts and the qualities that are important to you, without making a huge leap, especially if you're a family person, you've got responsibilities. Definitely, that's the easier way to do it.
Yeah, and to interject a little, I think something a lot of our audience might find of interest too. I mean, I've faced that same thing really in the last couple of years. Maybe I just don't know what I want to do enough, but I'm an engineer. I have a master's degree in engineering, and I really enjoy it. But I also have this online presence where I've had like a marriage ministry that I still go, and I just wrote my first book actually revolved around that topic. And of course now we have Fit Marriage and all the things with fitness and health because that's just another passion. So I feed all of those. But my full-time career, I'm still an engineer. Right. And just last year I was going through a lot of these same struggles where I'd been at the same company for 10 years. I still love the day-to-day work. I love everything about it, but the culture of the company was just killing me. Yeah. And so I took a couple months and really took a hard look, and it was very scary, but I ultimately ended up just switching companies and went for a different consulting firm. I do pretty much the same thing day to day in a similar environment, same geographic area. I have friends ask me, well, why would you go through all that change? And I said, it's just world's different, just because I'm around different people day to day. So what you said there really hit home, and that you don't necessarily have to make a dramatic change. It may from the outside seem like not a change at all, but if you can really have some introspection and figure out what is making you feel so uncomfortable and kind of irritable every day, about that existence, that's perfect. So thanks for sharing that first step.
Sure. I mean, you look for the conflicts and major qualities that allow you to come alive and see if you can resolve them sort of in the minimally disruptive way. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And when you can't, that's when generally you sort of go to this next place. And you do what you've actually done with your various interests, and you start to build something on the side. Now, I was very fortunate. I was not the average example. So I had a high-paying job. I was able to bank a lot of money and just make a really clean break and essentially go to zero for a while until I learned a new industry and built myself back up. Most people can't do that. So what most people who I've interviewed have done is they start something on the side. And instead of like coming home, and a lot of people will be like, I have no time, I have no time. And what they'll find is that a lot of times, like people come home and they're like, I need to unwind, I'm watching TV, I'm on
Right.
the internet, playing games, stuff like this. And if you actually, and that actually takes a couple hours a day. The average person, depending on the survey that you read, the average person in the US, adult in the US, has between 2.5 and 4 hours of TV time a day.
Yeah, that's
Just on
amazing.
fun.
And even the email chat. I mean, and because one of the things that we focus on too is like, how do you find time for fitness? And you're talking about finding time for the side gig, which similar constraints. Yeah, a little less Facebook. How about you check your email twice a day instead of 400 times, every 5 minutes,
Right.
where you're compulsively checking it? Yeah, that's a trap I fall into, and you break your train of thought, and you waste so much time that way.
Oh,
Um,
huge.
you know,
Yeah,
30 minutes in the morning, you can make a big dent in your fitness, or 30 minutes to an hour each morning, which is kind of how I do this for the most part, and lunch breaks like I am today. You can do a lot of side business, and really build something special without. I have 3 little kids and a hopefully happy wife, and today's our 10th anniversary actually, and
congrats.
it's not. Oh, thank you. And it's not that hard. I don't watch that much TV anymore though. So you're right. You just have to prioritize, I think,
And what people find is that like they actually you don't miss watching TV because doing this thing on the side makes you come alive. You're
yeah,
passionate about it.
yeah,
So like where you thought you needed to unwind, doing something that actually like you're building something like building a passion project on the side, not only like gives you like the rejuvenates you the way that TV does. It goes way beyond that. Like passive screen time basically just like zones you out. It's somewhere between neutral and destructive in your life.
yeah,
Whereas building like a passion project on the side is incredibly constructive. It's from a mindset standpoint and from a health standpoint. So, with rare exception, there aren't, there's some parents that I've spoken with where they're single parents, they're working 2 jobs and they're
yeah,
working literally 18 hours. I get that. That
yeah,
is a brutally tough situation, and that's about the toughest situation. There still may be ways to find it, but there's no doubt when the first thing is to make sure that your ship is righted and that the holes are plugged and you've got enough, like sort of baseline money to pay the rent,
right,
put food on the table. But after that, every free minute, you spend on building this sort of more passionate pursuit on the side. And one of the things also, a big reframe is most people will be like, well, I love basketball. I love sports, but I'm 40 years old. I'm out of fat. I'm fat. I'm out of shape. I'm broken. I'm in pain. I'm like, and I was never any good at basketball when I was a kid either. So I'm not going to be a professional sports player. So how am I? But so what the answer to stuff like that is to zoom the lens out and say, if you really like, if you totally love, like the game, you also probably love the culture.
yeah,
Is there a bigger business opportunity in the culture that surrounds the game? And indeed there is. You look at products and services that serve that culture. You look at, like ways to create community around that culture, the way that you're doing it with your project. You're creating community
sure,
around certain interests. There are so many different ways to do it. Is there a teaching or information need around that you could serve? And you look for gaps. Is there something missing in those ways to exploit the culture? And almost always there is.
yeah,
Almost always there is. And the beautiful thing is with technology these days, so I've been a brick and mortar entrepreneur a number of times over, and I really like being a brick and mortar entrepreneur because I just like having a place and being around people and mentoring them and learning from them.
sure,
But over the past 4 or 5 years, as I've really gotten immersed in the online world, it gets harder and harder to justify the pace and the risk. When I can research, launch, test, a dozen businesses in a year and have 10 of them fail and still be totally fine. Whereas, like I couldn't do that with a brick and mortar business based on the level of risk and overhead that I have to take.
yeah,
So, if you can do something in the online world, it becomes way easier to do it.
yeah. Well, that's those. I think those tips alone are worth the price of free admission here, for sure. I mean, that's great. So, I mean, to summarize, really do some introspection, really pay attention to what makes you feel come alive. Makes you feel like you're coming alive. And then if at all possible, start a passion project on the side that focuses on and it might take you several attempts. I know I've had several attempts of things online, like you just said, and they aren't, killers. That if you waste, and if you learn for a month of trying something, you realize either the idea doesn't fly, or maybe it doesn't make you feel as alive as you thought it would. Then try, branch off a little bit and try something a little different. But yeah, I think those are fantastic pieces of advice.
Yeah, and I've had way more. I mean, let's just put this on the record. I've had way more failures than successes by an order of magnitude. But the beautiful thing is you cut those short and then you let the successes run. But you've got to be willing, and that's largely what the next book is about. It's about leaning into uncertainty, going to that place where you've got to be willing to go there and actually take a risk with like allowing yourself to come alive. That's where the real magic, the great work happens.
Yep, for sure. I'd like to before I cut you loose here, talk a little bit about health and fitness. I mean, you had a period there where that was really your focus in life, was helping people with their health and fitness and overall wellness. And obviously, I believe strongly there's a correlation between your health and fitness and, say, the health of your marriage, the health of your ability to be a parent. And do you see that same thing in career? I mean, do you find that people who make an effort to be fit and healthy are also better able to find that passion and better able to achieve their goals with their career and with their family life as well?
Well, so let me give you the yogic view on this. And when most people in the U.S. think about yoga, they think about what in the yoga world is called asana, or the movement part of it, like the exercise part of it. And traditionally, that's actually the much less important part of it. All of that was done for the purpose of basically healing, cleansing, and preparing your body to be able to sit in meditation, which was considered the much deeper part of it. So, it's to me not just physical fitness, but actually sort of a more whole body, mind body fitness, complete wellness, mindset and body are completely integrated. They're mission critical in your ability to do everything that you want to do. In your marriage, in your relationships. Profound research. I'm sure you've read Spark's book on exercise. I mean, tremendous research now on how exercise actually changes your neurochemistry.
Yeah.
It literally rewires your brain, and it grows new brain cells, which is mind blowing, because 5-10 years ago, until then that's always been considered to be impossible.
Yeah. Right.
So mission critical to me. And there have been times I've been injured a lot over the last 5 years. I've broken both feet. I've had all sorts of crazy stuff happen to me. So it's been a real challenge, and there have been windows where I've been largely inactive because I'm healing. But I feel it, and not only like your mood changes, your productivity drops pretty dramatically, your happiness in life tends to drop, and your creativity. There's actually some really strong research on linking exercise and creativity and innovation too. Your ability to actually, your what they call executive function is greatly improved through exercise. So.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Again, the personal experience, and you've experienced it with your injuries. When I get into these periods where I let other things overshadow it, and I'm not active in some way, once you kind of experience the other side and how creative and productive you can feel by exercising, you can really feel like you're in a fog or a haze of some sort, and the levels of productivity. I'm actually, by the time this airs, it might be up, but yeah, I'm writing a post for a blog called Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn, and I'm really proud of the post, and it's all about the effect of why entrepreneurs, online entrepreneurs, who tend to be sedentary and sit behind computers all day, why they really do need to integrate fitness as part of their business plan, because it has such a dramatic impact on your productivity and creativity. So yeah, what you said there really rings a bell with some of the things I've been kind of reading on and writing on and thinking about a lot myself. So
yeah, it's hugely important.
And so and I know you just took a run, so to close out here, maybe a little more candidness here. So what role does fitness play in your everyday life? I know you're big into yoga, and I know I see you on Facebook, and you meditate regularly. Sounds like you run. What other sort of things are you doing, and how frequently?
Yeah, I mean, I shift it up all the time, because to me, it's less about sort of repetitions, and like sort of linear stuff. It's more about what are the activities that I actually love to engage in. Mm-hmm. So when it's warmer, I love to be outside. I love to hike. I love to like go climbing. I love to I like being outside. I don't like inside environments when it comes to exercise unless I have to be there.
Yeah.
And like you said, the strongest part of my sort of wellness practice is actually my meditation practice, which is a newer thing for me. I've meditated on and off for years, but in the last year is when it's really become a strong focus. And even bringing that sense of mindfulness and sort of present awareness to the exercise can really change your exercise while you're in it too. In fact, there's some fascinating research that actually bringing a really strong focused awareness to muscle contraction while you're doing it actually increases strength gains more quickly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how does it integrate into your family life? Is your wife into fitness? Is she into yoga? Do you incorporate time with your daughter into your fitness and that sort of thing? Because I know for a lot of busy families, we talked about time being a big constraint. It's great, I think, if you can combine quality time with your spouse or with your kids with your fitness and wellness and those outdoor activities. Are you able to do much of that?
Yeah, well, like you said, I just came back from a run. I was actually running with my wife, so
perfect.
Yeah, it makes it, it's nice to be able to do that because you feel good when you're doing it. You motivate each other, while you're doing it. It's a way to sort of talk and spend some time together also.
Yeah.
When you're doing intervals, it's not so easy to talk.
You can't breathe. It's hard to talk. But.
Right. Until you hit that point where you're sucking wind and like screaming on the ground, it's pleasant. But yeah, so we try and do stuff together, but we also have some different interests, so we kind of have to honor. I think it's like learning, you're married 10 years now, I'm married 14 years actually. At some point, you start to realize that, you actually don't like the same things on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. Yeah, my wife likes to run, and I like to do more, strength training, the P90X. I like to get out and ride my bike and that sort of thing. She just likes to run. When we go on vacation, I'm like, hey, honey, I'll run with you. We don't have a lot else available as far as equipment goes. Nah, I'm not running on vacation. Vacation's not for running. So yeah, you learn that over time, and you just respect it. And we definitely do our own thing a lot, but we also try to do some things together.
Right, and you have to do that because exercise is really individualized, and if you're doing something that you hate doing, you won't keep doing it. So it's really important to honor that too.
Yeah. Well, to close out, I know we've mentioned Career Renegade. I think if anyone appreciates the few points that we had time to talk about today as far as taking those first steps, they'll love that book, and I think that'll be the real map and guidebook for them. So definitely check out Career Renegade. You're working on your next book. You intimated a little bit about what it was about. Can you expand a little bit more about what the book in 3 months will be about?
Yeah, sure. So the book is out September 29th, actually, and it's called Uncertainty, Turning Fear and Doubt into Fuel for Brilliance. And what it really is I've been fascinated with this sort of question of why, to create anything great, to create anything truly brilliant, you need to be able to take bold action in the face of uncertainty. Problem is that terrifies most people. In fact, we're hardwired for it to terrify us because in historic times that kept us safe. But these days, it actually stops us from doing some incredible things. But there's a small, I start to find small groups of people that just were able to lean into that place and deal with the uncertainty and the anxiety and fear, and sort of transform it into fuel and create amazing things consistently. So I became fascinated with like, is this just genetic? Or are they doing things differently that allow them to process the experience differently and just do great things? And it turns out that, for a very, very small number of people, there is probably a slight genetic element to it. But for the vast majority of people, there are a set of environmental changes they're making, workflow adaptations, and personal practices that they adopt, oftentimes without even realizing they're doing it, that make a profound difference in your ability to actually go to that place and just take consistent, bold action and create, just tremendous, tremendous stuff, whether you're an artist, in business, in life. It all takes the same thing. I became fascinated with that question. There's tremendous, really interesting science around it too. So the book is this really cool amalgam of killer stories, really powerful proven science and neuroscience, and some really strong practices, strategies, and changes in environment and workflow that are actionable. I'm so jazzed to bring that out. And so many people have been asking me, they're like, "When's it coming out? When's it coming out?"
Not soon enough, right?
And I know. So I'm getting emails every day. People are like, "Dude, I need the book now. I can't wait 3 months. When is it going?" So people are begging me for advanced copies. So I'm really excited for that to come out. So
that sounds awesome. Yeah, it sounds right up my alley, and it sounds like one of those books that you don't realize you need to read until you've seen it, because like you said, most people probably block out the idea of doing something uncertain. They haven't really taken a lot of bold action. So to read the stories, I'm sure, are very inspiring, and then to hear some actionable tips for how you can start doing it yourself and seeing some effects. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for it.
So I guess I'm sure there will be ability to to buy the book in advance and those sort of things. For anyone who wants to get a hold of you or just read more, you have a fantastic blog. You're great to follow on Facebook and Twitter. So I recommend you do all those things. Can you point us to just the best place or two for people to track down Jonathan Fields?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my home base is my blog, which is just jonathanfields.com. And
Okay.
I'm most conversational on Twitter, which is also Jonathan Fields. I'm basically Jonathan Fields everywhere.
Sure.
So if you just, even if you forget and you type my name into Google, I own Google for my name. So.
And
Or
it's
they information.
THAN, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
JLNHAN.
Yeah, and of course I'll link to all those things here in the show notes. But if you're listening to it on iTunes, just look up jonathanfields.com and you'll get lost in all the. It's amazing. You have like the best of area on your blog, and there's like 10 different topics, and there's 10 different posts, and they're all the best of for good reason. And so everything from health and fitness to relationships to obviously career advice and everything in between. So. Perfect. Jonathan, I greatly appreciate your time. This has been inspiring to me, so I know it'll be very motivating and helpful to all our viewers and listeners. So thanks a lot.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jonathan Fields. As you can see pictured here, this is Jonathan's new book, which will be out in September. It's called Uncertainty. I definitely encourage you to go pre-order it if you enjoyed Jonathan and really felt the vibe of what he's talking about with career, life, and health balance. I also encourage you to check out Career Renegade, which is the book that he kind of started to walk us through in his step-by-step fashion there with how to find your passion business. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next week we'll be back with the founder of eMeals, who will be talking all about meal planning and the importance of meal planning for your health, for your financial well-being, and for your family time. So really looking forward to that interview and sharing that with you. So we'll see you next time here on the Fit Marriage Show.